All right, so on page 114, question number 1, the graph shows a path that a rugby ball followed after it was kicked. The y-axis represents the height of the ball in meters, while the x-axis represents the horizontal position of the ball in meters. Okay, so what does it actually mean? So let's look at this diagram specifically. Again, let's look at this graph. I'm going to zoom right in. All right, you could see that it is being kicked. So it goes up and it comes back down. Right, so, but in rugby, there's 2 ways of kicking a ball. Okay, there's one way where it's on the ground and you kick it. And then there's another way where you can hold it and kick it. So if you've ever watched rugby or if you ever played rugby, you know that you can hold the ball and kick it, or it could be on the ground and kick it. Okay, so in this graph, if you look at it properly, is the person holding the ball or is the ball on the ground when it's being kicked? Does anyone know just by looking at it? Okay, so if you look at the diagram properly, you can actually see that it starts from the bottom. All right, so it's the ball is actually, the ball is actually here on the bottom of the ground. All right, so it's actually being kicked on the ground. No one's holding it and kicking it. They're actually kicking it on the ground. Now, if someone was actually holding and kicking it, it will look, the graph might look like this. All right, it will have a different starting point. You're going to notice that it will have a y-intercept. Okay, that's higher. That's how I know someone's holding and kicking it versus someone that's kicking it from the ground like this. All right, so this ball is being kicked from the ground, and that's how you tell if it's being kicked from the ground or someone's holding it, kicking it. Okay, so let's read question 1a. Question 1a says, what is the maximum height the ball reaches? Okay, so they're not talking about how far it went. Okay, that would be the horizontal distance. They're talking about height. All right, so I'm going to highlight it here, the height. They want to know how high the ball went. Okay, so if I look at my graph, again, I'm going to zoom in on the graph. I'm going to look at the highest point it went, which is way up here. There's the point. Okay, so that's the highest it went. Now, if I look at where the highest point reaches, and it's kind of hard to see, it goes to this spot here. All right, so obviously if I highlight it in black, it's not going to show, but okay, that's the highest it went, if everyone can see it properly. Okay, which is also called the maximum. Now, if we look at this point here on the graph, this black dot that I drew on the graph, this black dot actually has a name. Okay, so if I'm looking at the parabola, it's called the vertex. And I said the vertex is made out of 2 things, an x value and a y value. And the x value is known as the AOS. And in this question, the graph opens down. It's known as the max because it opens down. And that's what they mean. That's what they want. They want the maximum height. Okay, so in this question, if I were to write what the AOS is, okay, the AOS is going to be 20. And the maximum is 10. Okay, and like I said before, the vertex is probably one of the more important points on the graph because it actually helps you solve these questions that they're going to ask. So what is the maximum height the ball reaches? The maximum height the ball reaches is 10 meters. All right, so please put units. This question does have units. If you look on the side there of the graph, that is the maximum height of the graph. Okay, the next question, it says part B. At what horizontal distance did the ball reach its maximum height? Okay, so they're not asking you how far the ball went. That's a totally different question. They're asking you when did the ball reach its maximum height. Okay, so if you look at the vertex in this question, it's the AOS is 20, and that's when it reaches the maximum height. Okay, so it is a reading type question. You have to pay attention to what the question's asking. I feel like that's probably where you will make a mistake if you were going to make a mistake. Okay, the next question asks about how far did the ball travel? Okay, so this time it's how far. Okay, so I have to look all the way down at the bottom of this graph, way down over here, where the ball hits the ground. And that's 40 meters. Okay, so that's how far he kicked it away. It's pretty far. Okay, and this point here is called the x-intercept. And now when we did yesterday's work, there was usually two x-intercepts. The other one is actually down here at the beginning. That one is 0. Okay, so please write down what I'm writing in your workbook. That way you can it kind of helps you figure out what's what. All right. So we're not going to do D and E. We're just going to stop there because those are the key features that you kind of really need to know. What the AOS represents in a normal question, what the maximum represents in a question, and then what the x-intercepts might represent in a question. Okay, now this question technically has a y-intercept as well, and it's actually down here as well. Okay, they're not asking what the y-intercept is, but if they were, it would be 0 as well. All right, and that's going to be it for today's lesson.